Yes. So, good afternoon, everybody. And, I'm very honored that you want to come and listen to me talk about Wiremock. And hopefully you will learn something in the coming 30 minutes. Let me first start by introducing myself. My name is Rosanne Joosten. I am a software engineer at OpenValue. And, I've worked with Wiremock on a previous project of mine. And today I'm going to show you a little bit why it was handy for us to use and how we used it a little bit. And I'm going to share a little bit of my experiences. The demo is going to be hopefully explanatory how you can start with Wiremock yourself. So, Wiremock, as the title of my talk says, is a buddy for your microservice when you want to test it. And when we're talking about a microservice structure or architecture, it could look something like this, right? We have one application that has, for example, one user interface and multiple microservices that deal or handle that application. And imagine that we are responsible for this green one. And, we want to test it. But as you can see, there are a lot of arrows there from other services pointing to it or from it that are not our responsibility. So how do we deal with that? So the problem with testing your microservices is often these bullets. It's, for example, the test scope. Like I said, when you're dealing with a lot of other dependencies and you are not mocking your or stubbing your dependencies, then you're testing a lot more than your service. So the test scope is not as desired. Another problem is the test data. Often when you're using an application, we often have these personalized applications where you for starters, have a user and with a user ID, and this user has to be known in the entire system. And sometimes it's difficult to get the test data in every microservice aligned and corresponding with each other. Another problem, and this problem is more more annoying, when you have automated tests in your build pipeline, for example. When we didn't use Wiremock yet, we had this problem that sometimes in the middle of a integration test or an end-to-end test, that it failed because one of our dependencies, it was being deployed at the moment. So it wasn't available at the time that we needed it for the test. So this is very annoying when you depend on a lot of microservices. And another another problem can be that these services are external services, not only not within your team, but also it could be out of your company, like really external. And this is an example I'm going to use when I show you a demo. Then I'm going to deal with an external service that's not, mine to admin or to monitor. So these are a couple of problems when you want to test microservices. And, as I mentioned quite briefly, is you can use a mock, and I also use the term stub. A more general term for all these vague concepts is, according to Martin Fowler, is a test double. And as he states, there are a couple of forms of test doubles, just so that we have our definitions clear, is that you can have a test double which is a fake or a dummy. And this fake or dummy, it uses the actual implementation, but you pass around an unused value, like a user ID, you can generate it. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be an existing one. Or you can use a shortcut where you don't use the existing database, but you have an embedded database. Then when you make your test double a little bit more intelligent, then you get a stub. And a stub is something that returns the same value always. It's always the same, so it's a canned answer, and it's always independent of your test. You set it up beforehand. And then when you add a little bit more complexity there, you get a spy. And spies are like stubs, but a spy records all his calls. So you can ask him like how many times you've been called or with what parameters you've been called. And then at the top or bottom, depends which way you're going, of the complexity of a test double is a mock. And a mock also includes expectations, and that's why you often have to set it up within your test. And it has all the featured mentioned above. So that's the definitions we're dealing with. And when we're dealing with Wiremock, we are working with a mock server, and we serve stubs or stub answers. Back to our problem. Well, I want to use a mock, like I stated before, because a mock has a little bit more intelligence in it without rewriting the whole application, because that's often something you have to be aware of when you're using a mock, that you don't want to rewrite the whole implementation. So we're going to use a mock. And how do we going to use a mock? Well, or why are we going to use a mock? I already stated the problems. And, well, you can think about it a little bit harder, but I will summon them for you. The benefits when you are trying to not only mock an external service, but when you mock an HTTP service, REST service, these are the benefits that you gain. So you benefit on speed because you have it under control and there's no external call there. You avoid rate limits because sometimes, as in my example, in the demo, you are limited to amount of times you can call an external service. You have the problem, well, you avoid the problem of modifying state, which you sometimes don't want, it only want within one scenario. You can much more easily duplicate or mimic edge case scenarios, including error scenarios. And I think, last but not least, it's very important that the response is always the same. It's deterministic. And this is what we truly want when we're testing our service, because we don't want any flaky tests. We want our answer always to be the same so that we can test our own functionality and not the one of anybody else. So these are the benefits. And, well, Wiremock can help you with that. And as Wiremock describes itself, it is an HTTP mock server. And Wiremock you can use in two ways. You can use it as a standalone process, and you can use it as an embedded library. This talk I'm going to dive in to the standalone process, because that's where I experienced the most benefit out of it. But just to show you a little bit how the library would work, it is more something like this. You have a rule, and this rule, well, you can point to your configuration, and you can see it in the first line of the test method that you say, I'm going to stop this, and I'm going to return this value. So it's more usable for an integration level, not so much an end-to-end test. So this can be powerful too, but there are, I think, a lot of good already frameworks out there that can help you with this. So this is just something to show you that this is possible too with Wiremock, but this is not the part that I like best. So this is all you're going to see about using Wiremock as an embedded library. Well, how does the standalone Wiremock work? Well, in a very abstract way, it works like this. You are the client and you call your external service, but instead of calling your external service, you have in your configuration file that you are calling Wiremock. And Wiremock receives this request, and he's trying to map it, and he's trying to give you the corresponding response data. Easy as that. Well, that's very vague, right? So let's show you how it works. And let me start. Is it quite readable in the back? Yes? Okay, cool. So I have this directory right here, and in this directory I have, well, an emergency folder because I'm kind of depending on internet right now, and you shouldn't do that. So I have this emergency folder, but please don't look at it right now. But as you can see, I have just a plain old jar. And all you have to do to start is start that jar. And as default, it starts on port 8080. So let's go to my browser and go to localhost 8080. Oh no, nothing's there. He's talking about the problem accessing files, something like that. And as we go to our console again, you can see that Wiremock has a really nice way. I'm going to show you a nicer way later on. A nice way of giving you feedback that no stubs were registered. Well, as I stated before, these are the canned answers that we need. And if you have totally forgotten what stubs were registered or what mappings you had registered, there's a nice way to ask that. It is underscore admin. And you can see that no mappings were registered right now. There's one way to register mappings, and I'm not gonna do it by memory. I'm gonna copy that because it's a nice curl. You can post something to it, and we can look at it right here. Is it right? Yeah, kind of readable. It's a plain old curl, and I'm gonna post some data with a request. And well, we can look at it in more detail later when you can see it much better. First, I'm going to post this. Well, it has been posted, and now as we go to our mappings, we can see that it's there. We can see that it is quite big, a bit bigger. So. We can see that we have a mapping, which is a list, and every mapping within that list has an ID, and it has a request, like what requests, and am I going to map to this response? So he says that like when the URL ends with get this, and it's a get, I'm going to return 200 with the body. Here it is. Well, if you don't believe me, localhost 8080 get this. Here it is. The problem is, apart from we started up Wiremock and we did a post that we don't want this, right? We don't want to start a random Wiremock and that we have to post all our stub data to it. We don't want that. So how can we fix it? Well, to give you a little bit more of context, I'm gonna take you to a more real-life application. As I stated before in the demo example, I'm going to use an external service. Well, I'm going to use a weather live service, which is shows you the weather in only the Netherlands. And well, this is an external service, and it's also limited to be called 100 times a day, or otherwise you have to pay for it monthly. Well, I don't like that, so I can only call it 100 times a day. So let's hope that the demo goes right from now on, and that I only have to use it for a little time because Wi-Fi troubles. Because a really nice way to get started with Wiremock is to use these flags, apart from me using the port flag because I don't like using the default port. I'm gonna proxy it all to the actual website, and I'm gonna record the mappings. Well, let's do that. Where was my like that? Like that. So now you can see that we started up on a port and we proxied it all, and there are a lot of more properties right here, which if you are really interested, you can you can always look at the documentation because a half an hour is short. So when we go to our admin screen, which is not on 8080 anymore because I changed it to 4 times 9, we can see that our mapping is looking quite differently. It has a proxy base URL, which also shows that when you want to use Wiremock, you can always choose to mock certain external services and use the actual implementations of others, or proxy it through to another endpoint. So you can use Wiremock as a loop through. And now that, since we're using the actual implementation or the actual API, I have to call it a certain way, which I also have right here. And the reason for that is, like I stated before, I can only call it 100 times a day. They can only monitor that when they give me something unique. So I have this unique key. If you all copy it, then perhaps we can use it a little less. So let's leave it for now. And we, apart from this copy, we have to give it a locatie, which, well, it's Dutch for location. Surprise there. And I'm going to enter my hometown, which is Amersfoort, which is not very familiar for you, but I'm going to do it anyway. So this is the actual data that we're getting from the weather API. This is, well, real life data. So by this time it is 10 degrees Celsius in my hometown. I don't know how warm it is right now, but I think it's a bit warmer here, right? 10 degrees is quite low. But now what have we done? I have proxied it through, so I didn't use the functionality of Wiremock. No, but now it is really easy to do that. Not like this, but oh. Wait. Java jar, Wiremock. And I had this port 4 times 9. The cool thing is, I entered this flag record mappings. And now when I go to my admin, I just started Wiremock playing with a different port. I hit record mappings, and he recorded the actual mappings for me. So this data that I got from the actual implementation, I have it right here. I don't have to write it myself. This favicon is not so interesting, but this one is. It says a URL with a key, which is a get. I'm going to return a body file. So you can, not only in the first example I showed you, you had this actual body written right here, but you can also refer to a file. And now when I call it, we get the data from Wiremock. And if you don't believe me, which you shouldn't, wait, where was I? Wiremock, it's right here. And as you can see, Wiremock, well, apart from my emergency folder, Wiremock generated these 2 folders for us. These files, mysterious files folder that he already mentioned earlier, and these mappings. And if I am opening these, yeah, because I wanted to convince you, right? Body, not the favicon, but the root. Oh, what's happening? Wait, just gonna do it right like this. Yes, open it. Yeah. Nice. Should have opened this earlier. Oh, it's just one JSON file. Come on. Yes, there you go. Why aren't you listening? Yeah, to prove you that I was, well, not lying, I am gonna make it a bit colder at my hometown, like 1.3 Celsius degrees. And then when I go to Chrome again and refresh, you can see that it is the actual file that we're using. But still, this is kind of like a canned answer, right? We get this static URL and we get this static data, because when I enter here something completely different, wait, this is not the place, Utrecht, which is a bit more familiar, we get nothing. And now when we go to Wiremock, he says in our console a bit more descriptive, I got this request with Utrecht in it, and the URL does not match, but the closest stop is this one with Amersfoort. So we don't want to do this, right? This is still a bit, not helpful. I'm gonna open, and therefore I'm going to open the mappings. Why is it like this? Yes, because we both know that even though it says that this is a URL, we both know that this is not the URL. These are query. Now I have to take a peek because I don't want to make any mistakes. Yeah, parameters. Yeah, of course. There you go. We both know that these are query parameters, and one of the query parameters is the key, and the other one is the locatie. And since this key is unique for me as a user, I want to assure that this is always the key we are using, because otherwise it wouldn't work in production. Don't know if my argument is right, but I just want to show you this functionality. So when you have this query parameter, you can check that it's equal to a certain value. But what we want to do with location, locatie, we don't want it to equal something. We want it to match something. And now comes the fun part. Often when you want to match something, you want to have to use regex. So I'm not going to make it all too complex regex, because I think that's a totally different topic. So I'm just going to say, any characters. And now this is not a URL anymore, and it's not here, but this is a URL path. And let's see if I have it all. Yes, I think so. I hope he saves it, because it's in maroon. Let me think. I have to restart it for this, because I edited the mappings, and you can edit the mappings when you post to it, but you cannot edit them on the fly. So let's start it again on port 4x9, and let's see if it worked. Well, first we can look at the admin. Yes, it's there. And now we can go to, well, first let's see if Amersfoort still works. Yes, it does, with our 1.3 value. And now when we enter another location, we get a response, which is already an improvement, I think. Apart from that, perhaps you want to do some validation that the entered response is actually a town, a city. But that's something to do later. But now it's not matching, right? Because we are trying to get the weather from Utrecht, even though that it is a mock, and we get some data, but when we go further in our application, we still want to see that it's Utrecht there, not Amersfoort. Well, that's possible too, and therefore I have to go. Oh, this is quite small. I can see it just now that it's quite small. Wow. And it's not. That sucks. I'm just gonna read it for you, because I can't on the fly help you with that. What we want to do is we want to use some transformers on our template. I'm seeing someone do it like that. Thanks. Is it quite readable now? Yes. For the people who didn't see it, you saw it in the mappings in the admin screen, right? Otherwise, it looks like this. So we want to transform our response. And, well, Wiremock has something for that. Transformers. And Wiremock has a functionality where you can write your own transformers and use them right here. If you're lazy as me and you don't know, there's a lot of already available information to use from Wiremock if you use their own transformers. So this is, I'm not going to do it by memory. This is response template, thanks. we're going to use a transformer response template, and that means that when we started it in a certain way, which I will show you afterwards, that, yes, it works, that we now have access to the request right here. I'm not going to guess, yes, I was guessing right. Like that. So we have access to the request, and not only do we have access to the request, we have access to our query parameter and its value. So now when we enter this query parameter locatie, we can use it within our request. So now if I restart it, and I go to home again, and first let's see if this is still up and running. Oh no, wait. I said I had to start it with a certain, on the command line on a certain way, and I have to do that. So let's stop this, and let's not guess again. We're going to do it like that. We're going to start up our jar on a certain, on our port, and we're going to use the flag global response templating. That's all that is needed. And when we go to our home and let's use Amersfoort first to see if it's still working, and then we try Utrecht, or we try Amsterdam, or we try anything at all, which is not a city. It is put into our response, so we can make our response a little bit more dynamic and a little bit more realistic without implementing the whole weather service, external weather service. And apart from that, you can also use some very cool mathematical transformations. For example, this value, which is now quite long, you can use something like a random value, which, well, sometimes you have good reason to use in a deterministic mock. But for example, the temperature, I'm not really interested in the temperature, so I'm gonna, make it more random, and I'm gonna generate two random numbers with a dot in between, because that's fun, and it's possible, and it's a functionality which you have to be familiar with. So now when I enter another, Veenendaal. Oh, wat leuk. Oh, what's happening? What's happening? 999 global response templating. What did I do? Locatie, the key. Unchecked exception. Oh, this is new. Was it like that? No, I'm doubtful. I did this like so many times. It was stupid. Copy paste. It was the only one wrong. Thanks. And yay. So now this temperature. Oh, let's do it like that. It is random, right? Awesome. Well, that's a built-in functionality you can use as well. Well, this is a very short demo of what is possible with Wiremock. There are a lot of other features which I think, if you're interested or you see possibilities for using Wiremock, which I think you should dive into, like these custom response templates that I was talking about. Because, well, random values, for example, are not always what you want. And, well, scenarios is another big thing where you can keep, within one scenario, you can keep a state. I only showed you the good responses, the status 200 responses. You can also mimic bad responses. And there's a whole couple of flags which you can add to look at more secure Wiremock ways and use with multiple threads and stuff. This extensions flag is necessary when you are using your own transformers. Very short, I'm gonna share my experiences. What you really have to keep in mind when you use Wiremock and stubs is please update your stubs frequently. You can do this via the record mappings that I showed you, but this Spring Cloud contract has a very nice integration which first tests your contract between these microservices. A whole lot of talk, but it is really necessary for testing your microservices, I believe. And when it is successful, then it fills your Wiremock stubs for you. So it's a very nice combination, these two. We use it a lot within our end-to-end tests, and we used it in our local development, which was pretty cool because we wrote this test engine application, which the product owners could use. We had made a little GUI around it, like enter the client that you want to test with, and then they could test with that client without concerning about the test data underneath it. So that was really cool. And it was also a way for us to separate the front-end developers from the back-end developers, which I don't think is something you want. But we had a completely dedicated front-end developer. And we just made an agreement about the model that we are going to use in the API. And he started up Wiremock, and we could develop independently from each other. We were not dependent of who was finished earlier. So that was pretty cool. Well, I'm a bit over time, but please rate my talk and leave some feedback because I really want to learn. And if you have any questions, please come forward because I don't have any time anymore. But thank you very much.